Rev your engines and prepare for a whiplash-inducing journey through Detroit's most exhilarating decade. The 1960s birthed the American muscle car, chrome-clad beasts with thunderous V8s that terrorized drag strips and turned tire smoke into an art form. But for every legendary quarter-mile crusher, there lurked an embarrassing pretender with more sizzle than steak under the hood. From pavement-scorching icons to marketing department disasters, buckle up as we count down the 17 angels and 16 demons of the golden age of Detroit muscle of the 1960s. Number 1, the 1964 Pontiac GTO. It wasn't the first muscle car, but it damn sure defined the breed. When John DeLorean and his team stuffed the 389 cubic inch V8 into the mid-sized Tempest body, they created the perfect formula that every muscle car would follow. What made the GOAT the best? It created the template that launched an automotive revolution. Mid-sized car, big block power, affordable price. Under the hood, the 389 tri-power setup with 3 two-barrel carbs turned out 348 horses and could blast through the quarter mile in about 14.8 seconds. Jaw-dropping numbers for 1964. The GTO wasn't just about straight-line speed, though the suspension was tuned better than most lane yachts of the era. Pontiac expected to sell maybe 5,000 units that first year, but moved over 32,000 as gearheads snatched them up. With its stacked headlights, split grille, and muscular stance, the GTO looked like it was doing 100 miles per hour, standing still. The interior was basic but functional. This was a car built for stoplight to stoplight battles, not luxury cruising. Pontiac's marketing was genius too, with the GTO name borrowed from Ferrari and ads that appealed to the speed-crazed youth culture. The 64 GTO didn't just sell cars, it launched an era. Number 2, the 1969 Dodge Charger RT. It was an automotive intimidation on wheels. While other muscle cars tried to look fast, the Charger actually looked dangerous. What made it the best? That sinister front end with hidden headlights and that menacing grille created the most recognizable muscle car silhouette ever to roll out of Detroit. Power came from the standard 440 Magnum V8, pumping out 375 horses, or the optional 426 Hemi that officially made 425 horsepower, though everyone knew it was closer to 500. The RT could tear through the quarter mile in the high 13-second range with the 440, or mid-13s with the Elephant motor. Dodge moved about 20,000 Charger RTs in '69, impressive for a performance model. The Charger's fastback design with flying buttress C-pillars and full-width tailgates still turns heads today. The interior featured the iconic Charger dashboard with 4 deep-set gauges and that aircraft-inspired center console. The Coke bottle styling and double diamond body creases made it look like it was carved from a single block of metal. Immortalized by its role in Bullitt and later as the General Lee, the '69 Charger RT remains the epitome of muscle car cool. The kind of car that makes you walk away and look back every time you park it. Number 3, the 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. The Z28 was Chevy's secret weapon in the Trans Am Wars. While the SS got all the boulevard attention, the Z28 was built for one thing: dominating road courses. What made it the best? It was the rare muscle car that could actually handle, proving Detroit could turn more than just left. Under the hood lurked the purpose-built 302 cubic inch small block, conservatively rated at 290 horsepower, but actually putting out closer to 350. The high-revving 302 could wind to 7,000 RPM and push the Z28 through the quarter mile in about 14.9 seconds. Not the quickest straight-line muscle car, but that wasn't the point. Chevy sold just 602 Z28s in 1967, making it one of the rarest and most desirable first-gen Camaros. Each one came with distinctive rally stripes, a heavy-duty suspension package, power disc brakes, and that glorious 302. The '67 Z28 styling was pure business. clean lines with just enough aggression in the stance to let you know it wasn't a secretary's car. Inside was all business too, with a driver-focused cockpit and minimal thrills. The Z28 proved that muscle cars could do more than just drag race, setting the stage for the more balanced performance cars that would follow. Number 4, the 1968 Plymouth Roadrunner. The Roadrunner was Plymouth's middle finger to automotive complication and price bloat. What made it the best? It stripped away everything that didn't make the car go faster and kept the price tag under $3,000, bringing muscle car performance to the masses. Motivation came from the standard 383 cubic inch Roadrunner V8 pumping out 335 horses, with the 426 Hemi available for those willing to pony up extra cash. The 383 cars could blast through the quarter mile in the low 14-second range, impressive performance for the budget-minded buyer. Plymouth expected to sell about 2,500 Roadrunners in 1968, but moved nearly 45,000 as buyers flocked to its no-nonsense approach. The styling was utilitarian Belvedere with just enough flair to let you know it meant business. A non-functional hood scoop, modest graphics, and plain Jane wheels with dog dish hubcaps. Inside was equally Spartan, bench seat, minimal sound insulation, and basic gauges. What it lacked in luxury, it made up for in character, with the trademark beep beep horn that perfectly matched the cartoon Roadrunner on the badges. The Roadrunner was a blue-collar hero that proved that you didn't need a fat wallet to run with the big dogs. Just a heavy right foot and a taste for burning rubber. Number 5, the 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. It was Ford's sledgehammer in the muscle car wars, a homologation special built to legalize their monster NASCAR engine. What made it the best? It packed one of the largest, most powerful engines ever to grace a production pony car. A motor so massive that Ford had to modify the entire front end to make it fit. Under that massive hood bulge sat the semi-Hemi Boss 429 V8, conservatively rated at 375 horsepower, but actually producing well over 500. Despite its NASCAR pedigree, the car was hampered by restrictive factory exhaust and intake systems, resulting in quarter-mile times in the high 13-second range. Good, but not reflective of the engine's true potential. Ford built just 859 Boss 429s in 1969, making them incredibly rare and valuable today. The Boss 429 styling was remarkably subtle given what lurked underneath. Apart from the massive hood bulge and modest decals, it could almost pass for a regular Mustang. The suspension was beefed up to handle the massive weight of the engine, and power steering and brakes were standard equipment. For Ford fanatics, the Boss 429 represents the ultimate collectible Mustang. A hand-built, low-production thoroughbred that exists solely because Ford wanted to go racing. It wasn't the quickest stock muscle car, but with a few modifications, it could be the most powerful. Number 6, the 1965 Shelby GT350. It transformed the Mustang from a secretary's car to a legitimate track weapon. What made it the best? Carroll Shelby's racing expertise turned the humble pony car into a fire-breathing, corner-carving monster that could hang with European sports cars twice its price. Power came from a modified 289 cubic inch Hypo V8, which pumped up to 306 horsepower, a serious number for a small block in 1965. The Shelby could run the quarter mile in about 14.7 seconds, but straight-line speed wasn't the point. This was a Mustang that could actually handle. Each GT350 featured a lower suspension, Coney shocks, larger front brakes, and a Detroit locker rear end. Shelby built just 562 GT350s in 1965, immediately creating a collector's item. The race-inspired styling was pure business, complete with Wimbledon white with blue stripes, fiberglass hood, deleted rear seats, and the iconic side exit exhaust. The interior was Spartan, with a wood-trim steering wheel and pod-mounted tachometer, the only concessions to luxury. The 1965 GT350 set the template for performance Mustangs that continues to this day. Take a standard Mustang add power, improve handling, and create something greater than the sum of its parts. It remains the purest expression of Shelby's vision and the most collectible of all Shelby Mustangs. Number 7, the 1970 Chevelle SS 454. It represented the peak of the muscle car era, the biggest engine in a mid-sized body with no concern for fuel economy or emissions. What made it the best? In LS6 form, it packed 450 horsepower, the highest factory rating of any classic muscle car, creating a street legend that still defines the genre. The LS6 454 cubic inch big block was conservatively rated at 450 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque, enough to propel the Chevelle through the quarter mile in the high 13-second range with stock tires. With slicks, 12-second passes were common. Chevy built about 4,475 LS6 Chevelles in 1970, the last great year before emissions regulations strangled performance. The 70 Chevelle's styling was muscular perfection. The twin racing stripes, cowl induction hood, and squared-off fenders created an intimidating presence. Inside, you could option bucket seats and a center console, but many buyers stuck with the bench seat for true sleeper status. The SS 454 became the benchmark by which all other muscle cars were measured. The perfect combination of stunning looks, neck-snapping power, and relatively affordable pricing. When people close their eyes and imagine muscle car, most see a 1970 Chevelle SS with those iconic stripes streaking down the hood. Number 8, the 1968 Oldsmobile 442. It brought back muscle car performance to Oldsmobile's more upscale clientele. What made it the best? Its perfect balance of luxury and performance, following the 442 formula that gave it its name: 4-barrel carb, 4-speed manual, and dual exhaust. Power came from a 400 cubic inch V8 producing 350 horsepower and a stump-pulling 440 foot-pounds of torque. The 442 could run the quarter mile in the high 14-second range, impressive for a car that prioritized refinement alongside speed. Olds sold about 33,600 442s in 1968, showing there was a market for muscle with manners. The 68 442 styling was clean and elegant compared to some of its more flamboyant competitors. The distinctive front end with vertical bar grille, subtle hood bulges, and tasteful side stripes gave it a sophisticated presence. Inside, the 442 offered more comfort features than most muscle cars, with nicer materials and sound insulation. What set the 442 apart was its handling. The standard anti-roll bars front and rear, plus the optional W30 forced air induction package, created a muscle car that could do more than just burn rubber in a straight line. The 442 proved you didn't have to sacrifice comfort for performance, appealing to slightly older buyers who wanted their speed with a side of sophistication. Number 9, the 1969 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. The Trans Am arrived late in the muscle car party, but immediately established itself as the handling champion. What made it the best? It was among the first American performance cars to emphasize cornering ability alongside straight-line speed, setting the template for future generations. Under the hood sat Pontiac's 400 cubic inch Ram Air 3 V8, officially rated at 335 horsepower, but actually producing closer to 380. The Trans Am could run the quarter mile in the low 14-second range, while also being one of the best handling American cars of its day. Pontiac built just 697 Trans Ams in 1969, making it one of the rarest muscle cars of the era. The styling was instantly iconic: polar white paint with blue stripes, functional rear spoiler, and that show-stopping screaming chicken hood decal. The interior featured bucket seats, a formula steering wheel, and engine-turned dash inserts that gave it a racy feel. The Trans Am's sophisticated suspension with staggered rear shocks, special springs, and larger sway bars made it a legitimate corner carver in an era of straight-line specialists. It established a performance sub-brand that would outlive its parent Pontiac division and become an icon of American performance for decades to come. While most muscle cars faded away in the 1970s, the Trans Am was just getting started. Number 10, the 1966 Dodge Coronet Hemi. It was Mopar's street-legal race car, bringing NASCAR technology to public roads. What made it the best? It packed Chrysler's legendary 426 Hemi, a near-mythical engine that dominated racetracks and inspired fear at stoplights across America. The 426 Hemi was conservatively rated at 425 horsepower, but actually produced closer to 470. Even with skinny bias-ply tires that couldn't hook up properly, the Coronet Hemi could blast through the quarter mile in the mid-13-second range. With slicks, skilled drivers could dip into the 12s, incredible performance for a showroom stock car in 1966. Dodge built just 732 Hemi Coronets in 1966, making them among the rarest and most valuable muscle cars today. The Coronet styling was crisp and clean, with minimal adornment beyond subtle Hemi badges that warned would-be challengers. Inside was equally businesslike, with plain bench seats and minimal luxury features. This was a car built for going fast, not for comfort. What made the Hemi Coronet special was its competition pedigree. The 426 Hemi was developed for NASCAR and barely civilized for street use. With dual 4-barrel carbs, solid lifters, and a rigid high RPM personality that was intimidating to novice drivers. It wasn't for the faint of heart or light of wallet, but for those seeking the ultimate in 1960s performance. Nothing else would do. Number 11, the 1969 Plymouth GTX. It earned its nickname as the gentleman's muscle car by combining luxury appointments with serious horsepower. What made it the best? It delivered all the performance of other Mopar muscle machines, but wrapped it in a more sophisticated package for buyers who wanted both speed and style. Standard power came from the 440 Super Commando V8, producing 375 horsepower, with the 426 Hemi available as an expensive option. The 440 powered GTX could run the quarter mile in the high 13-second range, while Hemi cars could dip into the mid-13s. Plymouth sold about 15,600 GTXs in 1969, showing there was a market for premium muscle. The GTX's styling was cleaner and more upscale than its Roadrunner sibling, with unique grille treatment, standard hood scoops, chrome trim, and characteristic gills on the front fenders. Inside, bucket seats, wood grain trim, and additional sound insulation created a more refined environment. What set the GTX apart was its dual personality. It could run with the fastest muscle cars of the era, while also being comfortable enough for daily driving or long trips. The standard heavy-duty suspension and brakes ensured it wasn't just about straight-line speed. For buyers who found the Roadrunner too bare bones, but still wanted serious Mopar muscle, the GTX hit the sweet spot of performance and polish. Number 12, the 1967 Buick GS 400. It brought muscle car performance to Buick's traditionally more conservative clientele. What made it the best? It delivered serious speed with Buick's trademark refinement, proving you didn't need to sacrifice comfort to go fast. Power came from Buick's 400 cubic inch V8, producing 340 horsepower and a massive 440 foot-pounds of torque, perfect for effortless highway passing and stoplight-to-stoplight supremacy. The GS 400 could run the quarter mile in the low 15-second range, not the quickest muscle car, but plenty fast for its target market. Buick sold about 10,000 GS 400s in 1967, establishing itself as a serious player in the performance market. The styling was clean and elegant compared to some of the more flamboyant muscle cars, with subtle hood scoops, modest badging, and tasteful trim that wouldn't embarrass an executive in the country club parking lot. Inside the cabin, the GS 400 offered more luxury features than most competitors, with better materials and sound insulation. What made the GS 400 special was its balance of performance and comfort. The suspension was tuned to provide good handling without the harsh ride of other muscle cars, and the 400 cubic inch V8 delivered its power in a smooth, linear fashion. It was the muscle car for grown-ups, appealing to successful professionals who wanted performance but didn't want to advertise it quite as loudly as a Dodge Super Bee or Plymouth Roadrunner. Number 13, the 1969 Chevrolet Nova SS. This was the original sleeper, a compact car with big block power that can embarrass larger, flashier muscle cars. What made it the best? Its combination of lightweight body and potent V8 options created one of the best power-to-weight ratios in the muscle car world. The Nova SS could be ordered with engines ranging from a 350 small block to the fire-breathing 375 horsepower 396 big block. With the L78 396, the Nova could run the quarter mile in the high 13-second range, quicker than many purpose-built muscle cars. Chevy sold about 17,600 Nova SSs in 1969, but only a small percentage came with the top engine options. The styling was understated by muscle car standards, modest badging, optional stripes, and few other visual cues to indicate what lurked under the hood. The sleeper quality was part of its appeal, as was its more affordable price compared to larger muscle cars. What made the Nova SS special was its no-nonsense approach to performance. It didn't have the flash of a Camaro or Chevelle, but with the right engine, it could outrun both. Its compact dimensions and lighter weight made it more nimble than larger muscle cars, while still providing room for four and a decent trunk. For buyers who cared more about performance than style, the Nova SS was a smart choice, a practical car that just happened to be seriously quick. Number 14, the 1968 AMC AMX. This was American Motors' bold entry into the muscle car wars, a unique two-seater that combines sports car handling with muscle car power. What made it top this list? For starters, its short 97-inch wheelbase and two-seat configuration that created the most nimble American performance car of the era. Power came from a choice of 290, 343, or 390 cubic inch V8s, with the top 390 producing 315 horsepower. The lightweight AMX could run the quarter mile in the low 14-second range with the 390 engine. Impressive performance for the smallest of the American manufacturers. AMC built about 6,700 AMXs in 1968, establishing a performance credibility previously lacking in their lineup. The styling was distinctive and purposeful. The chopped javelin profile, bulging hood, and optional racing stripes created a look unlike any other American car. Inside, the two-seat layout provided a genuine sports car feel, with bucket seats, full gauges, and a shifter perfectly positioned for quick gear changes. What made the AMX special was its handling. The short wheelbase, firm suspension, and quick steering created a car that could carve corners as well as it could rip through the quarter mile. It was America's answer to European sports cars, but with proper V8 power and muscle car attitude. For those willing to look beyond the big three, the AMX offered a unique combination of performance, exclusivity, and value that no other muscle car could match. Number 15, the 1969 Mercury Cyclone CJ. The Cyclone CJ was Mercury's sleeper, a semi-luxury muscle car that flew under the radar while packing serious performance hardware. What made it a beast? It featured Ford's potent 428 Cobra jet engine with deliberately underrated horsepower figures that surprised many a challenger. Under the hood lurked 428 Cobra jet V8, officially rated at a modest 335 horsepower, but actually producing closer to 410. With the optional ram air induction, Cyclone CJ could blast through the quarter mile in the mid 13-second range, quicker than many more celebrated muscle cars. Mercury built just 2,175 Cyclone CJs for 1969, making them rare finds today. Styling was cleaner and more restrained than Ford's Torino counterpart, with a unique front end, subtle hood scoop, and minimal badging that gave little indication of the car's performance potential. Inside was pure Mercury, with more sound insulation and luxury touches than Ford offered. What made the Cyclone CJ extra special was its sleeper status. It didn't shout about its capabilities the way a Plymouth Roadrunner or Pontiac GTO did. It was the muscle car for the mature enthusiast who wanted serious performance without the boy racer image. The Mercury badge gave it a more upscale personality, while the Cobra jet engine ensured it had the muscle to back up its understated looks. Number 16, the 1969 Ford Torino Talladega. This was Ford's purpose-built NASCAR homologation special, a slippery fastback designed for superspeedway dominance. It was arguably the first American production car designed with serious attention to aerodynamics, presaging the science-driven approach that would later dominate racing. Power came from the 429 Cobra Jet V8, producing an official 335 horsepower, actually closer to 410. The slippery Talladega could run the quarter mile in the low 14-second range, but straight-line acceleration wasn't the point. It was built for high-speed stability on NASCAR's fastest tracks. Ford built just 754 Talladegas in 1969, the minimum needed to homologate it for racing. The styling was subtly different from standard Torinos, with a flush grille, extended nose, filled-in rear window recesses, and other aerodynamic tweaks that reduced drag at high speeds. Inside was standard Torino fare, comfortable but not luxurious, with the focus clearly on racing success rather than passenger comfort. What made the Talladega stand out from the crowd was its purpose-built nature, where every modification had a functional reason related to racing performance. Unlike most muscle cars that were essentially standard models with bigger engines, Talladega was engineered specifically to win in NASCAR. Its success on the speedways led directly to the aero wars that followed, with Chrysler responding with even more extreme Charger Daytona and Plymouth Superbird. Number 17, the 1967 Plymouth Barracuda Formula S. It was a nimble pony car, offering balanced performance when most muscle cars focus solely on straight-line speed. It combined a lightweight body with stupendous V8 power and upgraded suspension and an attractive fastback package. Under the hood sat Plymouth's 273 cubic inch Commando V8, producing 235 horsepower, or the optional 383 big block, making 280 horses. The Formula S could run the quarter mile in the mid 15-second range with the 273, or low 14s with the 383. Respectable, if not earth-shattering times. Plymouth sold about 28,200 Barracudas in 1967, though Formula S models were a small percentage of that total. The styling was dominated by the distinctive wraparound rear glass, the largest piece of automotive glass ever produced at the time. Formula S added subtle performance cues like hood vents and modest badging, but maintained a cleaner look than many muscle cars of the era. What made the Formula S distinct was its handling. The standard heavy-duty suspension, anti-roll bars, and faster steering ratio created one of the best handling American cars of its time. The Formula S proved that muscle cars didn't need to be one-dimensional straight-line machines. When the roads got twisty, the Formula S driver had the advantage over bigger, heavier competitors. It was the thinking person's muscle car, offering a more balanced approach to performance than the brute force method favored by many of its contemporaries. Now that we've got the best, let's move on to the worst muscle cars of the 1960s. Number 1, the 1961 Chevrolet Impala SS409. This was Chevy's first serious shot at the emerging muscle car market, sporting clean, understated styling with those iconic bubble-top rear windows and twin headlights. It looked ready to rumble. She's Real Fine, My 409 became its Beach Boys anthem, but the reality fell flat for early adopters. The W Series 409 Big Block promised muscle car heaven with its impressive for the time 360 horsepower rating, but primitive cylinder head design with restrictive ports choked airflow. Factory intake manifolds were equally restrictive, creating major breathing problems. Quarter-mile times hovered in the high 14s, respectable, but nowhere near what hype suggested. Early production issues plagued these mills. valve train components couldn't handle sustained high RPM running, and conservative factory tuning left serious power on the table. Chassis dynamics were pure 1950s. Sloppy steering, marshmallow suspension, and brake fade after just one hard stop. Sales were decent only because Chevy's marketing machine outperformed the actual car. Despite the song-worthy 4-speed dual-quad posi-traction setup, the early 409 couldn't hang with properly sorted competitors. Chevy engineers would eventually address these shortcomings with better heads, solid lifters, and proper tuning. First-year buyers got stuck with an overhyped, under-delivering pretender that talked big but couldn't cash the checks its reputation wrote. Number 2, the 1962 Dodge Dart 440. Don't let the 440 badge fool you. This isn't the legendary big block. The 62 Dart 440 was Dodge's misguided attempt to inject performance into a bloated, confused package. The 440 designation in the 1962 Dodge Dart 440 was a trim level, not an engine size. Chrysler's bizarre styling direction gave this beast an ungainly profile with odd reverse slant rear window and awkward proportions that couldn't decide if it was a family car or a street bruiser. Under the hood lurked the underwhelming 318 V8 making a measly 260 horses. Bolted to a chassis originally designed for full-size duty, the power-to-rate ratio was downright embarrassing. Mash the pedal and you'd get more noise than motion. 0 to 60 times languished in the 9-second range, while quarter-mile slips showed 17-second passes. The push-button torque-flight automatic, though reliable, sapped what little muscle existed. Handling? Forget about it. Torsion bar front suspension couldn't compensate for the barge-like 3,500-pound curb weight. Skinny bias-ply tires folded like lawn chairs during cornering, and drum brakes faded faster than cheap jeans. Sales tanked as performance-minded buyers flocked to actual muscle offerings from Pontiac and Chevrolet. The Dart 440 remains a perfect example of Detroit missing the mark completely. All show and no go. Mopar faithful had to wait until a Max Wedge and Hemi era for Dodge to deliver proper street cred. This confused cruiser was just an overweight pretender wearing a sporty badge. Number 3, the 1969 Pontiac Tempest Le Mans GTO. The original muscle car legend that started it all was actually a flawed first draft. When Pontiac's John DeLorean and Jim Wangers snuck the GTO past GM's brass as an option package, they created history and a chassis engineering nightmare. The 64 GOAT packed the potent 389 V8 making 325 horsepower, or 348 horsepower with tri-power carbs. But the modified A-body chassis wasn't ready for that kind of twist. Plant your foot and the first-year GTO would twist like a pretzel. Terminal wheel hop plagued hard launches as the suspension geometry proved woefully inadequate for the newfound torque. Frame flex was so severe, the doors could temporarily jam during hard acceleration. The 4-link rear with drag arms was pure chaos under power. Stopping was equally terrifying with undersized drum brakes that faded dramatically after just one hard stop. Quarter-mile times hovered in the mid-14s with a skilled driver. Impressive on paper, but often unrepeatable in the real world due to cooling issues. The styling was spot on with stacked headlights, subtle hood scoop, and clean lines, helping Pontiac sell 32,450 units, despite the chassis flaws. Early buyers got the worst of it. Improvised front spring rates, incorrect shock valving, and suspension geometry that made power oversteer the default handling mode. The GTO would evolve into greatness, but first-year examples demonstrate how the muscle car concept outpaced chassis development. Number 4, the 1966 Dodge Charger 318. Dodge's fastback dream machine looked like it should eat quarter miles for breakfast. The sleek roofline, hidden headlights, and full-width taillights screamed, "Catch me if you can." But the base model Charger whispered, "Please don't try." The standard 318 V8 was a laughable mismatch for this otherwise gorgeous B-body. Making just 230 anemic ponies, the smallish mill struggled to motivate 3,800 pounds of American steel. 0 to 60 crawled by in the 9-second range, with quarter-mile times hovering in the high 16s, numbers that wouldn't scare most family sedans. Inside, the space-age interior with full-length console and electroluminescent gauge cluster looked trick, but added weight without function. The fold-down rear seats were practical for hauling lumber, but useless for hauling ass. Even the marketing folks seem embarrassed, burying 318 performance figures in brochure fine print while showcasing the optional 426 Hemi. Sales disappointed with just 37,344 units moving that year. The problem wasn't the concept, but the execution. Buyers expected muscle to match the menacing looks. The 318 Charger became the poster child for all bark, no bite in the muscle car era. Budget-conscious buyers suffered with a gorgeous but gutless cruiser that got smoked by goats, Chevelles, and even some compacts. Dodge learned its lesson quickly, creating the more focused and fearsome 68 Charger, but first-gen 318 models remain automotive wolves in sheep's clothing. Number 5. The 1967 Plymouth GTX 440. It was marketed as the gentleman's muscle car, but the chassis manners were anything but refined. The B-body platform packed serious firepower. The thundering 440 Super Commando V8 cranked out 375 horses and mountains of torque, making straight-line speed its forte. Quarter-mile times in the mid-13s were impressive, but the chassis was a one-trick pony. The fatal flaw? Weight distribution that would make an engineer weep. 62% front, 38% rear. This nose-heavy setup created possibly the worst handling muscle car of the era. Turn the wheel, and you get terminal understeer as those skinny front tires plowed straight ahead regardless of steering input. The torsion bar front suspension couldn't compensate for all the cast iron hanging over the front axle. Braking stability was equally sketchy. Hard stops produced dramatic nosedive and rear-end lightness that kept drivers white-knuckled. The optional disc brakes helped somewhat, but couldn't overcome the fundamentally flawed weight balance. Sales hit a respectable 12,010 units, thanks to aggressive marketing and those impressive straight-line numbers. Stylistically, the GTX nailed the muscle car formula with subtle aggressive cues, optional stripes, and clean proportions. It became the perfect boulevard cruiser and stoplight hero, but any attempt at spirited driving on twisty roads revealed its shortcomings. Plymouth wouldn't address these handling demons until the 70s, making the early GTX the perfect example of horsepower outpacing chassis development, a rocket sled with shopping cart handling. Number 6. The 1967 Mercury Cougar XR7. Mercury's luxury pony car promised Mustang performance with European sophistication, but delivered neither. Based on the Mustang chassis with a 3-inch longer wheelbase, the Cougar XR7 piled on luxury features, wood grain trim, toggle switches, and leather seats, adding 300 pounds without upgrading the suspension to handle it. The hidden headlights and sequential taillights looked trick, but underneath lurked compromised engineering. The standard 289 V8 made just 200 horsepower, struggling to motivate the extra weight. Even the optional 320-horse 390 felt sluggish compared to similar engines in lighter cars. The suspension tuning prioritized a cushy ride over handling precision, creating a wallowing mess in corners. Contemporary road tests revealed excessive body roll, understeer, and brake fade. Quarter-mile times for 390 models hovered in the mid-15s, nearly a full second behind equivalent Mustangs. Sales were decent at 27,221 XR7 units. But Mercury created a confused machine that couldn't decide its identity. Too heavy and soft for performance enthusiasts, yet lacking the true luxury of larger sedans, the Cougar XR7 fell into the dreaded neither-nor category. The European-inspired interior looked upscale but suffered quality issues. Those fancy toggle switches broke regularly, and the wood grain appliques warped in hot weather. Mercury had stumbled into an identity crisis on wheels, a muscle car compromised by luxury pretensions and a luxury car hampered by sports car limitations. Number 7. The 1968 Ford Mustang GT390. Steve McQueen may have made the 68 Fastback a legend and bullet, but magazine testers discovered the ugly truth. The 390 GT was a disappointment. The restyled 68 Mustang grew larger and heavier, but Ford failed to properly balance the package with the right powertrain. The 390 cubic inch big block looked impressive on paper with its advertised 325 horsepower, but reality proved harsh. The Road Test magazine clocked embarrassing 0 to 60 times in 7.7 seconds, over 2 full seconds behind competing Camaros. Quarter-mile times languished in the high 15s, when Chevys and Mopars were breaking into the 13s. The problems were numerous: restrictive factory exhaust manifolds, conservative tuning, and a choked air cleaner setup that prioritized quiet operation over performance. The C6 automatic transmission was a particular power robber, sapping precious horsepower before it reached the rear wheels. Ford sold plenty, roughly 72,458 GTs based on looks alone. That fastback profile with quad headlights and aggressive stance remains timelessly beautiful. But underneath that sexy sheet metal lurked mediocre performance that failed to match the visual promise. Weight distribution was another weakness, with the heavy 390 overwhelming the front suspension during hard cornering. The optional power steering was overboosted and numb, while the drum brakes were barely adequate for the car's performance potential. The Mustang GT390 remains the quintessential example of marketing triumph over engineering substance. Number 8. The 1968 AMC AMX 290 V8. The AMX was AMC's gutsy swing for the performance fences, America's only true two-seater muscle car besides the Corvette. With its short 97-inch wheelbase and deleted rear seat, this pony car promised handling to match its aggressive looks. The distinctive fastback styling with chopped rear end, bulging fenders, and broad hood scoop turned heads and won design awards. Trouble was, the base 290 cubic inch V8 was a serious letdown. Making just 225 wheezing horses, it transformed this potential giant killer into an underpowered curiosity. Magazine tests revealed 0 to 60 times over 8 seconds, and quarter-mile times in the 16-second range, performance that family sedans could match. The optional 343 or 390 engines were mandatory for anyone serious about performance. The chassis actually delivered decent handling. Firm suspension, quick steering, and a short wheelbase created nimble dynamics. But the anemic base power plant couldn't capitalize on the handling potential. It's like AMC built a prize fighter, but gave him pillows for fists. Despite the performance shortfall, AMC sold 6,725 units in '68, respectable for a niche player. The interior was industrial Spartan with aircraft-style toggle switches and basic comfort features, appropriate for a focused performance machine. The AMX 290 became the classic muscle car tragedy. Brilliant concept, flawed execution. AMC lacked the development resources of the Big Three, creating a visually stunning two-seater that promised more than the base engine could deliver. In 290 form, it was all sizzle and no steak. The muscle car that couldn't muscle. Number 9. The 1968 Ford Torino GT302. Ford's intermediate muscle entry looked tough, but packed a pea shooter under its sculpted hood. The first-generation Torino GT featured aggressive styling with a fastback roofline, quad headlights, and optional hood scoop that promised serious street cred. The problem? The standard 302 small block couldn't cash the checks the bodywork was writing. Making just 230 horsepower, the small 302 struggled against the Torino's beefy 3,700-pound curb weight. Period road tests confirmed the disappointing reality. 0 to 60 times languished in the 8-second range, and quarter-mile slips showed 16-second passes. Those numbers wouldn't impress anyone at the local drive-in, especially when Chevelles and GTOs were running 13s. The handling wasn't any better. Soft springs and undersized sway bars created excessive body roll and understeer, while the recirculating ball steering offered all the precision of stirring pudding. Standard drum brakes were barely adequate for normal driving, let alone performance use. The 302 Torino GT exemplified Detroit's bait-and-switch approach, which lured customers with racing styling, then sell them underpowered versions that looked fast but moved like molasses. Real performance required the optional 390 or 428, making the base 302 the muscle car that time forgot, with good reason. Ford's marketing department certainly knew what they were doing, plastering performance-oriented buzzwords across dealership brochures while delivering a sheep in wolf's clothing. Enthusiasts quickly learned the disappointing truth when leaving stoplight confrontations with red faces. The Torino's well-appointed interior with bucket seats and floor shifter only served to further the deception, suggesting sportiness that the chassis couldn't deliver. Even period automotive journalists couldn't hide their disappointment, with Car and Driver noting the significant performance gap between base models and properly equipped versions. The 302's weak torque curve, peaking at just 310 foot-pounds at a relatively high 2,800 RPM, further highlighted its inadequacies as a performance power plant in such a substantial vehicle. Modern collectors generally avoid these base engine models, preferring their more potent siblings that could actually lay down rubber when provoked. Number 10. The 1969 Pontiac Firebird Sprint. Pontiac's attempt at European style sophistication produced the oddball Firebird Sprint, a muscle car with an identity crisis. While its F-body siblings packed proper V8s, the Sprint featured an overhead cam inline 6 borrowed from the Tempest, making just 230 horsepower from 250 cubic inches. GM promoted it as sophisticated and advanced, but buyers weren't fooled. Performance was tepid at best. Experts claim 0 to 60 times around 9 seconds and quarter miles in the high 16s. Figures that wouldn't impress anyone at the stoplight Grand Prix. The high-revving 6 provided decent mid-range punch, but lacked the low-end torque muscle car buyers expected. What truly killed the Sprint was economics. The complex overhead cam engine was more expensive to produce than simpler V8s while delivering less power. It also proved less reliable. Timing chain issues and valve problems plagued early models. The specialized parts made repairs costly and difficult for average mechanics. Despite handling advantages from the lighter nose, sales were dismal. Pontiac built just 4,285 Sprint models for '69, compared to nearly 87,000 total Firebirds. The stylish Coke bottle body with its pointed nose looked proper, but the powertrain couldn't match the image. The Sprint concept was admirably different, a muscle car valuing balance over brute force. But America wasn't ready. Sophisticated six-cylinder performance remained a tough sell in a market fixated on cubic inches and quarter-mile times. The Sprint stands as a muscle car that zigged when the market wanted it to zag. Number 11. The 1969 Chevrolet Chevelle Malibu 307. The '69 Chevelle remains one of the most iconic muscle car silhouettes ever penned. Those square-jawed fenders, subtle cowl induction hood, and perfect proportions created automotive art. But while SS396 models deservedly achieved legendary status, the base Malibu 307 version was the ultimate poser. Under the gorgeous sheet metal lurked the embarrassingly weak 307 cubic inch small block, making a pathetic 200 horsepower. This weak power plant transformed what should have been a muscle car into a sheep wearing wolf's clothing. 0 to 60 times crawled past 10 plus seconds, with quarter-mile passes taking over 17 seconds. VW Beetles could legitimately hang with these sleds. The handling wasn't any compensation. Soft springs, skinny tires, and lightweight sway bars meant significant body roll and understeer. Power drum brakes were optional, making panic stops downright scary with the standard manual drums. The base 3-speed manual transmission felt like stirring a bucket of rocks, while the optional Power Glide automatic had just 2 forward gears. Inadequate for performance driving. Chevrolet sold boatloads of these underpowered pretenders based on looks alone. Inside, the stripped-down Malibu trim featured bench seats and minimal gauges, a far cry from the SS396's performance-oriented cockpit. 307 Malibu perfectly captured Detroit's cynical marketing approach. Leveraged the halo effect of true performers while selling affordable lookalikes with economy car performance. It remains the textbook definition of all show and no go. Muscle car styling wrapped around family sedan performance. Number 12, the 1969 Dodge Dart Swinger 340. It should have been a giant killer. This compact A-body tipped the scales at just 3,200 pounds and packed the high-winding 340 small block, one of Mopar's best engines, making 275 advertised horsepower. The manual transmission versions were legitimate stoplight terrors, but early automatics were a different story. Dodge's decision to mate the peaky 340 with the TorqueFlite automatic created a mismatch of epic proportions. Factory calibration prioritized smoothness over performance, with shift points that killed acceleration. The transmission's internal gearing was optimized for larger engines, leaving the 340 struggling outside its power band after each upshift. Factory tuning exacerbated the issues. Early automatic models had retarded ignition timing and restrictive exhaust to meet internal sound regulations. Quarter-mile times for automatics were nearly a full second slower than 4-speeds, roughly high 15 versus mid-14s, a huge difference in muscle car metrics. Sales figures don't separate auto from manual, but Dodge moved 20,884 Swinger 340s that year. The tidy styling with semi-fastback roofline looked right, and proper handling made these compact performers nimble through corners. Weight distribution was nearly perfect, and the torsion bar front suspension provided impressive grip for the era. The manual transmission Swinger 340 was a legitimate muscle car bargain, but early automatics were compromised performers. Dodge wouldn't properly sort the powertrain combination until 1970, leaving first-year automatic buyers with a car that promised more than it delivered, a muscle machine hamstrung by its own transmission. Number 13, the 1969 AMC Rebel SST. American motor cars desperately wanted in on the muscle car action, but lacked the resources to do it properly. The Rebel SST exemplified this shortfall, an intermediate-sized contender marketed as a performance machine while offering economy car power. The base V8 made a meager 225 horsepower from 304 cubic inches, saddled with a hefty 3,600-pound curb weight. Performance was predictably dismal. 0 to 60 took nearly 10 seconds, with quarter-mile times languishing in the 17-second range. Even period family sedans could outrun this so-called muscle car. The optional 390 improved things somewhat, but still couldn't match competitors from the big three. Handling was straight from the 1950s playbook: excessive body roll, understeer, and vague steering feel. The suspension was tuned for boulevard cruising, not performance driving. Drum brakes at all corners faded quickly during spirited use, making repeated stops a white-knuckle experience. The styling was at least handsome, clean lines with subtle performance cues that aged well. Inside, the cockpit featured full instrumentation and bucket seats in an attempt at sportiness. AMC sold just 15,122 Rebel SSTs that year, showing buyers weren't fooled by the marketing. The name itself revealed AMC's confused approach. Rebel suggested performance, while SST, short for supersonic transport, implied luxury. This identity crisis created a car that excelled at neither mission. AMC lacked the engineering resources to properly develop a competitive muscle car, resulting in a compromised machine that handled like a shipping barge and accelerated with all the urgency of a continental drift. Number 14, the 1969 Mercury Cyclone GT. The Cyclone GT had all the right ingredients for muscle car greatness. Aggressive styling with that menacing snout, fastback roofline, and optional sport stripes. Mercury's intermediate muscle contender packed visual punch with its hidden headlights and racing-inspired grille. Under the hood, you could spec the potent 390 making 320 horsepower, suggesting serious performance potential. Problem was, Mercury engineers botched the cooling system completely. The radiator was undersized and poorly positioned, creating chronic overheating issues during any sustained performance driving. Push this beast hard for more than a few minutes, and temperature gauges would climb faster than gas prices during an oil embargo. Many owners resorted to aftermarket cooling mods just to make their cars reliable. The suspension tuning created another performance letdown. Excessive body roll and soft springs prioritized ride comfort over handling, creating a wallowing mess in corners. Contemporary road tests revealed disappointing skid pad numbers and slalom times well behind the competition. Quarter-mile times with the 390 hovered in the mid-15s. Respectable, but nothing special for the era. Mercury sold 10,656 Cyclone GTs for $69. Decent numbers for their market position. The interior featured comfort-oriented bucket seats and full instrumentation with wood grain accents, creating a luxury performance vibe. The Cyclone GT suffered from Mercury's split personality, trying to be both upscale and performance-oriented while mastering neither. The cooling system flaws made it unreliable for actual performance use, creating a muscle car that looked fast but couldn't maintain its composure when pushed. All heat, no heart. The Cyclone GT exemplified style over substance. Number 15, the 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass S. Oldsmobile's intermediate muscle contender talked a big game, but delivered a watered-down experience. The Cutlass S looked properly aggressive with its European-inspired fastback styling, recessed grille, and optional rally stripes. The 350 Rocket V8 promised solid performance with 310 horsepower on paper, impressive specific output for a small block of the era. Reality proved disappointing. Factory-installed exhaust manifolds were flow-restricted to meet noise regulations, creating major breathing problems. Conservative carburetor jetting and ignition timing left significant power untapped. Quarter-mile times disappointed at 16 seconds flat, nearly 2 seconds behind proper muscle cars of the era. The suspension was tuned for the country club set, not stoplight warriors. Soft springs and light damping created excessive body motion during cornering and braking. The recirculating ball steering system was overboosted and numb, providing little feedback to the driver. Standard drum brakes faded quickly under hard use, making sustained performance driving nerve-wracking. The interior of the Cutlass S featured comfortable bucket seats and faux wood trim that reinforced the quasi-luxury positioning. The Cutlass S exemplified Oldsmobile's identity crisis, trying to maintain its near-luxury image while half-heartedly chasing the youth market. The 350 Rocket had genuine performance potential, but was strangled by factory restrictions. The result was a car that aspired to muscle car status, but delivered a flat, uninspired driving experience. All rocket in the name, but no actual boost. Number 16, the 1969 Shelby GT350. The late 60s Shelby Mustangs marked the sad decline of a once proud performance brand. While early Shelbys were performance-built track weapons, the 69 GT350 had devolved into little more than an appearance package with a hefty price tag. Carroll Shelby himself had largely checked out, leaving Ford to water down his creation. The heart of the problem was under the hood. The GT350 packed a 351 Windsor, making 290 horsepower, barely 30 more than standard Mustangs, despite commanding nearly $1,300 more. Suspension upgrades were minimal, with spring rates and dampening barely different from regular Mustangs. Contemporary magazine tests revealed disappointing performance, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, and quarter miles in the high 14s, scarcely better than standard Mustang GTs, costing thousands less. Styling remained impressive with functional fiberglass scoops, sequential taillights, and racing stripes, but the performance substance had evaporated. The interior featured deluxe appointments and a roll bar that was more style than safety. Ford built just 1,085 GT350 fastbacks that year, as buyers recognized the diminishing returns. The car that had once redefined American performance had become a cynical marketing exercise. Shelby's name commanded premium prices while delivering minimal performance gains. The 69 GT350 represents the ultimate triumph of marketing over muscle. A once proud performance icon reduced to selling image rather than engineering. It wasn't a bad car, just an overpriced, overhyped shadow of what the Shelby name once represented. Enjoyed this muscle car time machine? There's plenty more automotive nostalgia where that came from. Hit subscribe now for weekly deep dives into the classics that defined American culture. From hidden gems to legendary flops, we've got you covered.